Thank you very much to give me the opportunity to share a part of my passion of risk management. It's so much my passion that I don't know why Relyens pays me, but never mind. So we can start the presentation. Okay, it's me. The questions might be, why am I going to talk to you about human factors when we are talking about the human value? And in fact, there's two main reasons. First of all, I am absolutely convinced that there is a strong link between these two notions, human factors and the human value. And the other reasons, it's when we were preparing this workshop with Erwan, we realized, or that confirms that there is still a confusion between these two concepts. And it seems to me that the concept of human factors are not well known yet. So I choose to treat this presentation really simply, a bit like the human factors for dummies. In fact, my dreams is to reach to write this kind of book. It's really interesting. So I'm going to divide this presentation in three parts. The first part is to explain with some definitions what are human factors. The second part is to give you some examples to understand what we mean when we speak about human factor. And the last part, and the more important, I think, it's can we manage this concept in a healthcare system? So let's talk about human factors in healthcare. A definition. The human factors, in fact, is the human contribution involved. Sorry. The human factor is the human contribution involved in an event, positive or negative event, and it includes behaviors, abilities, individual characteristics as soft skills, communication, stress, fatigue, and so on. And you have in the other part the study of this concept of human factors. And the study deals with the relationships between individuals and systems. And when we are talking about system, we talk, of course, about technologic, but also organization, with which they interact and focuses on improving four important pillars: efficiency, productivity, creativity, and job satisfaction. I think these four pillars is a strong link with the human value and with all our discussions since this morning. And the main purpose of the study of the human factors is in order to minimize errors. So I would like just to focus on this notion of error. It's important to be accurate on what we are talking, just to be sure that we are talking about the same things. So what is the definition of error? I like to speak about this point because there is also a confusion between error, fault, violation, and so on. So we have a really simple definition to explain what is an error. An error is simply to doing wrong while thinking you are doing right. It's really important to keep this in our mind, because when you know that you are doing wrong, it's not an error, it's a violation. You break the rules. We have also a more formal definition, and it comes from James Reason in his famous book, The Human Error, but it's not important for our presentation for this time. Now, why am I talking to you about error? It's important to know also how many errors do we make, each of us in this room, per hour. In fact, we know now, with a high level of evidence, that we make from 2 to 8 errors per hour. It's more frequent, more common when you manage a cardiac arrest in the hospital, for example. It's obvious because you are under stress. And the main causes of these errors are speed, communication, lack of communication, lack of organization, coordination, the who does what, and difficulty to use and to believe on checks, stress, and so on. And what we are to do with this is it's essential, it requires to analyze this kind of error for obtain a perfect understanding. And I have a simple picture to explain, to illustrate what is a systemic analysis. Systemic analysis when you have in your mind the notion of human factors. In fact, this picture is to illustrate this principle. When you are in an accident, it's a bit like an open window on your organization. And sometimes the first reaction faced to this accident, it's unfortunately to close the curtains and to say that we will see if it's a serious event, and it's a little bit like to put the issue under the carpet. More often, unfortunately too, it's only to manage the immediate incident and to give some advice like be careful for the next time, and you don't go more deeper in to understand the root causes, or to understand the accident. And you have to practice you can practice the systemic analysis. And the concept of systemic analysis is to move closer to the window, closer and closer. And so you increase the view. You are closer again, and you can put your head over. You can look to the left and look to the right to the accident, and to understand how did we react, how did we manage the accident before the accident and after the accident. So it's all what I wanted to share with you about the notion of human factors, the definition, and the notion of errors, and the notion also of systemic analysis. And now I'm going to give you some examples of human factors to understand the real meaning. So I start with a quick test, really simple. The instruction is really clear. Say the color, of course, in your head, and not the name itself. So, of course, you realize that even if the instruction is clear, it's difficult to apply. It's, of course, perhaps some of us have less difficulties than others. In fact, it's a bit like if our brain sets some traps in our daily lives or daily work. I have another pictures, and I love it to explain what is the human factors during our daily lives. And I like this picture because it reminds me a real story. And you have, it's a door a security door in a car parking behind an hospital, behind a building. And of course, the security door must remain closed. And you have the technology. The technology is represented by an automatic system to keep the door closed. I don't know how the name in English. In French, we say groom. I don't know the name in English. So you have the automatic system to keep the door closed. You have also the procedure and the visual reminder, and it's written. The door needs to remain closed always. And you have the human being, and the human being thinks that he needs to stay this open, to stay the door open. And what is really interesting, it's of course, you can imagine what was the action of the management. And the management, it's a real story. Huh? It's the action is to set an alarm that rings when the doors stay open more few than 2 or 3 minutes. And after you have, again, the human reactions. And the human reaction is to figure out how to turn off this alarm. So what does this story teach us? In fact, if we want to understand the issue, if we want to understand the main cause and the root causes, it's important to analyze this story, to understand why this door stays open. In fact, perhaps people need to block the door because they have their arms full when they arrive in the morning. We don't know. So to sum up, if we don't take account of human factors, the risk is to find a wrong solution, to create a lack or less satisfaction, less effectivity. Therefore, you develop the human creativity to break the rules, of course, but I think it's not the main purpose. The question now is to know how is this human factors is frequent during an error. And we know that in a study with a high level of evidence, and the studies come from a French company airline, Air France, and that the results show that almost 80% of mistakes in aviation involve human factors. And we know that for now, there are 2 ways to leverage this human factor issue. First of all, it's to create an environment with technology and organization to limiting error. And the second part is to improve the capacity of the human, of the healthcare team, to detect and to have the right reaction in case of errors. Now, I just would like to share with you that the Icelandic aeronautical authorities, that they are setting up on their website a campaign to raise awareness of human factors. And it's known as the Dirty Dozen, like the a great movie a few years ago with... I don't know if you know this great movie. I loved this movie when I was young, 20 years ago. No, okay, 40 years ago. Really interesting. So it's the same thing in the healthcare system, where that there are 12 cost factors, principal cost factors, that they are unfortunately often at the origin of accident, and the first of them being the lack of communication. And what is interesting is that they propose some countermeasures to prevent and to avoid this, the impact of human factors. And we can speak about that at the end of this presentation. There are other cost factors. So, and to illustrate the impact of a lack of communication, of a bad quality of the communication in operating theater, I would like to share this a study really interesting. In fact, the goal or the main purpose of this study was to measure the anesthetist performance during 2 situations in the operating room in a simulated operative crisis. The purpose of this simulation was to see how the anesthetist managed an hemorrhagic shock in two situations, with a polite surgeon and after with a root surgeon. And the impact is a decrease more than almost 30%, the percentage of the anesthetist performing at the expected level. And this impacts on the vigilance, on the quality and the performance of the diagnosis, also the quality of the communication and the performance of the ability to communicate during the crisis, and unfortunately also the quality to manage the patient during this vital emergency. They try to make the same study with a root anesthetist, but they failed because it's impossible to find. No, of course, it's a joke, of course. It's for the discussion just after the presentation, of course. It's just for you after the presentation. It's two videos to illustrate another part. It's the notion of a cognitive biases, and one of the more known of cognitive bias is the tunnel effect. And if you have the time, you can see, and I invite you to show this, to watch these two videos to understand what is the notion of the tunnel effect and the cognitive bias. We know for now that there are more than 250 cognitive bias in healthcare. Yes. So to finish, the more important question is, can we manage the human factors? Now we know what are the human factors, the impact. So can we manage this? As in an airline company, we can propose some countermeasures in healthcare. First of all, is to put human factors knowledge into practice, to apply human factors principle to your work environment. The purpose is to avoid relying on memory, to use visual reminders, as we saw on the door, the security door, to review and simplify processes, standardize usual procedures and processes, systematically use checklists, and reduce the reliance on vigilance, and so on. There are others, but it's the main proposition, I think. And I'm going to finish not with a conclusion, but more with an observation. I think it seems to me that, in fact, we have a paradox, because we face to a lack of mandatory initial and continuing medical education. I think it's a little bit different with the nurses' education, but in France and also in the other country, we have no mandatory initial medical education concerned to the communication between professionals, so also with the patients. We have absolutely no training or no education on teamwork. We discovered the teamwork when we discover what is the operating theater, and when we put your first foot in the operating theater, you discover what is a teamwork, or if you imagine. And of course, we have no education about error, about risk, to give or to receive a feedback, and so on. So I finished. Thank you very much for your attention.